Hi everyone, my name is Deshawn, and I wanted to get the chance to talk about a topic in Mexico's pop culture, which is the first Pride March in 1979. I just chose this topic because I'm part of the queer community myself, and I was interested in getting to know more about this historical event. Just came over a random topic with my friends because we're talking about Pride. This last summer, or this summer that we're in right now. Anyways, let's get on with it. Basically, in a culture that promotes the idea of machismo and heavy influence of religion, the 1979 Pride March in Mexico City served as a groundbreaking act of political defiance and a push for inclusion. This march had a hand in challenging societal norms and later served as a pathway for future queer representation. So there could be some things that queers, not just in Mexico, but worldwide, face, but we're just talking about the queer population in Mexico right now. So I think these are some of the things that they face back then and even in today's time. Obviously, the first one is being ridiculed by society, not being taken seriously or made jokes of or seen as weird. Next is religion. I understand with some research and some basic knowledge that Mexico is, or it could be a religious country that mainly follows Catholicism. So that is obviously a big component against the queer community. And then we also have the machismo culture. So this culture basically promotes the hypermasculinity and the idea of what an ideal man is, and that is usually not a queer man. Usually a man that has romantic involved romantic relations with other men is not really seen to fit this machismo culture. Um, and then in the next slide in this one, I basically just took use a quote where they were talking about queer representation in media back then. Just to summarize it, basically they were seen as stereotypical, feminine, maybe doing over the top. In this example, um, the character has makeup and makes like feminine gestures and stuff like that. So that's one example of like society basically putting queer men into a box and like basically making a whole character out of them. Yeah. So we can get on to the actual Pride itself, or the first Pride March. Again, it happened in June 1979 in Mexico City. A group of young people that wanted to go against like their oppressions and stuff like that got together and started to march against being oppressed. And then yeah, this march was a good step towards the topic of queer individuals and their lives, especially in this country of Mexico. Um, there were posters that they were holding basically saying that there's no political freedom if there's no sexual freedom, and then without sexual freedom, there will be no social liberation. Basically, just going against the norm and sticking up for what they believed was right. And then just to paint like an idea of the political climate at this time in Mexico, obviously the government was very much against anything that was going out of norms, um, anything that would challenge masculinity and then religious norms. And obviously, this movement, the queer movement, was a big hit against the government. So they would see this movement and many other movements, not just queer, but see them as potential dangers against the culture. And then next up, we have to talk about some of these two. key figures in this movement. First, we have Nancy Cardenas. Cardenas. I apologize for my pronunciation. So first, she was like the first publicly out lesbian in Mexico, like in the public eye. She's the founder of El Frente de Liberación Homosexual, or the Gay Liberation Front, and this was the first LGBTQ plus civil rights organization. She also helped lead this first march in Mexico City, along with Juan Jacobo Hernandez. Again, I'm sorry for pronunciation. And he is a founder or co-founder of a lot, or not a lot, but like a good handful of queer liberation groups. So first there was the Frente de Liberación Homosexual, and then Frente Homosexual de Acción Revolucionaria. And then he also helped organize the first official Pride March in Mexico City. So these are just some two that I felt was needed to point out. But there's also, to move on with the discussion, I just want to talk about the whole reason of why I brought up this first Pride March was just because it was a big impact on future representation, and it was like kind of the start of what we know today in Mexico, and like how far they were able to get, because this was their first stride towards the discussion of this topic, and it also led into multiple like creations or representations of characters. I think one um lesson that stuck out to me in this whole course was the topic about um queer superheroes. And then we have to talk about Gregorio. Um and Rodriguez in his article just basically states that his whole presence or his whole character was not just to like throw out some new character, but it also was to help give some queer Latinos or queer people in general representation, and it was a good starter for like discussions about race and sexuality, and obviously HIV and AIDS. And then not only did this march eventually lead into future characters, but also it influenced like other parts of Mexico to be able to also start their own pride marches and stuff like that. So we have again, I'm so sorry, I'm gonna butcher this name so bad, but Chilpancingo Guerrero in Mexico. So in 2002 they actually had their first march too, in which in Payne's article he states that this march marks the arrival of a time when we are able to exercise our citizenship to definitively liberate ourselves from stigma, prejudice, and discrimination in Guerrero, which um, obviously is a good step and a great step for the queer individuals of that specific location to be able to represent themselves. And again, just to reiterate, my whole reasoning of bringing up the first Mexico City Pride was just basically because it was a really big, impactful moment in pop culture, and it led to so many other advances and the start of discussions, and even the act of challenging discriminatory laws and attitudes. And everything that stemmed from this march, we're seeing take effect into today's time. Even though it's not 100% perfect, I know that Mexico City and the rest of the world is still making a great stride towards advancements or just improved lives for everyone, especially queer lives. Thank you again for taking some time to listen to my presentation. Again, I'm so sorry for any pronunciation. Thank you so much. Have a good day.